Hi, and welcome to the show. Rate and review at kevinmd.com/rate. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today in the show, we have Jeffrey Fraser. He's a family physician, and we're going to talk about his KevinMD article titled, Let Doctors in Recovery Be Able to Recover Their Careers. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, thanks for, first of all, doing my article and inviting me to do the podcast. It's great.
And we'll get into the article in a little bit, but first off, briefly share your story and journey to where you are today.
So I'm a family medicine doc. I'm licensed in both Nebraska and North Carolina. I've been in a physician-owned practice, hospital-owned practice, and then also in my own practice where I had over 4,000 patients until this disease finally caught up with me. So I developed an addiction to hydrocodone when I had prostate cancer. I'd never taken hydrocodone before. I don't drink alcohol, and it just destroyed my life. I was up to 60 pills a day. So when I developed the addiction, I started diverting the narcotic. I wrote prescriptions for my patients. They bring it back to me. I'd pay their copay. And so finally got caught. So on January 2nd, 2018, I just finished my morning. It was like 11:45. I had a beautiful office, everything in it, a lot of patients. Looked down from my office, and two DEA agents came in, a state investigator from the Nebraska DHHS, and two state patrol agents with guns came in. I had a concealed carry license, which I'd had well before my addiction. So they came in, went down there, they came in without a warrant, without a subpoena for anything. And they said, "Where's your gun?" They frisked me, they had their guns. It was a scary deal. So that all got done. My wife did not know I was an addict. I've been married to her, we'll be married in 40 years in December. So I called her over to my office. My son, who's a medical student, med student, now he's a doc, but he came over and she did not know I was an addict. And her first words to me is, "Why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you tell me about this?" So that started my road to recovery. I detoxed for 15 years. Go ahead.
Before we go into that story, so tell me about the beginning of this. So in terms of the initial reason why you were prescribed hydrocodone.
So initially I was given it, I had back pain. I was receiving gamma knife treatment for prostate cancer. During my third treatment, I was complaining of back pain, so they gave me hydrocodone. That was my first prescription for hydrocodone. And it just lit up my brain. I had no previous history of addiction. I don't drink alcohol, and that's where my addiction began.
How long were you on it before you realized you were addicted?
You know, I got 3 prescriptions for it, and I kind of knew it the day one.
Wow.
At the end, my radiation oncologist called and said, "Jeff, if you continue this narcotic, I'm going to have to do something about it or do a full bone scan workup," because I was complaining of back pain, but I was using that excuse to get more of the pain medicine. So that's how it started, Kevin.
And you said that you're up to 60 per day?
60 pills a day. My body kept adapting. And so I'd use a lot of patients to get 60 pills a day. Yeah, it was not good, Kevin.
And what was the time frame between the start of the hydrocodone to when the DEA agents came to your office?
So I initially had a prescription in 2012, and I didn't do anything until 2014. Then the pressures of one of my practice, in fact, my brain was addicted, and we had some bad things happen to one of our daughters. That's when I started diverting it. So for about a 3-year period is when my active addiction occurred. I put it aside for a couple of years, but then from 2014 until the end of 2017.
Now, as you were diverting the hydrocodone, was there any thought in the back of your mind that eventually that you would get caught?
Yeah, I tried many times. I Googled how to self-detox, and then we'll talk about this more later. One of the reasons for my article is Nebraska doesn't have PHP, so I felt all alone. You know, I owned my own practice. I was by myself, and I just thought I'd die if I didn't have more of it. So the whole goal was to try to not die. I wouldn't, but just to continue maintaining that addiction. It was not a good way to live, Kevin.
So you talk more about your story in your KevinMD article titled, Let Doctors in Recovery Be Able to Recover Their Careers. So you left off your story at the time where you began your recovery. So tell us about that.
So I had a detox for 15 days, and I heard about Talbot Recovery Campus in Atlanta, Georgia, where they specialize in treatment of professionals. It started for doctors. Pilots from all over the world come over there, physicians as well, attorneys, and mainly professional people. So I went for a 3-month program at Talbot down in Atlanta. It was a great program. So Nebraska does not have a physician self program, and I knew that. I learned, well, I didn't know anything about it. I learned about it in treatment. So when I got back, I knew my license would be suspended in Nebraska. So during that year of suspension for a year, I hired an addictionologist. I did random drug screens, everything as if I was on probation, Kevin. So I got my license back in 2019. I then was recruited to North Carolina, got my medical license in North Carolina. And the story continues too.
Yeah. So tell us about that process about getting your license back. How difficult was that?
Actually, it's pretty easy because I submitted to the board all of my meeting lists. I went to meetings, 4, 5, 6 times a week. My drug testing, letters of support from my doctors, my psychologists, and ex-patients and family members. So getting my license back was easy. The problem in Nebraska, you go on probation for 5 years. In North Carolina, you're not on probation because they have a PHP, which is really what prompted me to write this article.
Now, in terms of most states, Nebraska, is that an outlier in terms of not having a PHP?
That's correct. At the time that I went to treatment, we were one of 5 states. During the past year, we're one of 3 states, Wisconsin, California. And then I recently heard we're now one state that does not have a physician self program. And that really makes it very difficult because the purpose of a PHP is to protect the physician from the medical board. North Carolina has a wonderful PHP. They put over 4,000 physicians through that, Kevin. And the medical board treats physicians in a much better way than Nebraska. They're very punitive for Nebraska.
All right. So you completed recovery, you got your license back and practicing in North Carolina. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I was working for Carolina East Health Systems, and I got credentialed for Medicare, Medicaid with I also got, I didn't tell you this, but I got charged with a felony. After a 2-year process, I pled guilty and was placed on probation for 4 years. That ended in July. They ended it 2 years early. So despite the history of the felony, North Carolina knew it. My employer knew it. I was credentialed for Medicare and Medicaid and was practicing in a small town called Vanceboro, North Carolina. And then on August 3rd, I got a letter from the OIG office that they excluded me from Medicare and Medicaid because of my felony, even though I was practicing and seeing all Medicare and Medicaid patients.
So you couldn't see Medicare, Medicaid patients because of that letter?
Right. So my practice terminated me, and now we moved back to Nebraska, and I'm working to get back actually to that same system. And also there's an opportunity here in Nebraska. So the OIG exclusion is a very severe consequence of this addiction. It can be overcome, and I can explain that maybe at another time.
So tell us what you're doing now. Yeah. So are you in the process of leaving North Carolina? Are you in Nebraska now?
We moved back to Nebraska because I thought there was an opportunity here. So I'm looking to there's a small town in Nebraska that's interested in me. The state Medicaid director will help me with this OIG exclusion, and also the original practice in North. That's where we want to end up, back in North Carolina, if we can overcome this OIG exclusion.
So until you got that letter from the OIG Office of the Inspector General, you mentioned that your employer, they're relatively supportive of your journey. Is that correct?
Oh, they were very supportive. They knew all about me, except his CEO at that time said he did not know I was a felon when they hired me. I'm not sure how that occurred, but he's not the CEO anymore. The new CEO has been very supportive, and hopefully we'll get back there.
Now, in terms of your journey in your past, did it ever come up whenever you saw patients in the exam room? Did they look you up online and find out about your history?
I found that just like when I had prostate cancer, I didn't tell every patient I had prostate cancer, but when a patient came in with prostate cancer, I would talk to them about that, share my story. The same way the disease of addiction is so rampant in North Carolina and also in Nebraska. So I'd take that opportunity to say, hey, I'm in recovery, and it would my patients love that. So they were very responsive coming.
Well, tell us about the path forward for you.
So now what I'm doing is working to get back into the practice of medicine. The state Medicaid director for both North Carolina and Nebraska are working to help me with this process.
Okay. And in terms of what you've learned, what you could share just for those physicians who may be undergoing similar issues to what you experience, what kind of advice can you share with them?
My biggest thing in my message is you're not alone. When you're addicted, your whole brain gets rewired, it gets hijacked, and all you think about. I talked to Robert DuPont when I was preparing my article. He's a national leader in addiction. He told me the best way to think about this, your brain becomes hijacked. And so maximizes the need for the medication, but minimizes the dangers. And that's exactly what happened. So I think is you're not alone. Seek help, seek treatment, and you can recover. You're not alone. When you're in that phase of addiction, you just think you're the only one. You think you're a bad person, and it's horrible. I go to a meeting for ever since I left Talbot Recovery in Atlanta. They have an alumni meeting, and so the current patients and all the alumni get together every Thursday, and we all share our stories. It's just amazing how prevalent this is. So my message is you're not alone, seek help, and you can recover. And also it's a disease, you're not a moral failure. I think society, medical boards, the legal system definitely treat this as it's a moral failure, not a disease. So I think we need to educate society and the legal system and the medical boards about this. And I'm working on getting a PHP in Nebraska. So that's my goal. And that's one of the drivers for my article, Kevin.
So tell us about those supports. You mentioned that you have had meetings with the alumni over at Talbot. How often are those meetings?
So that meeting is every Thursday night. Dr. Beatty, who's the medical director, leads it. And there could be up to 45, 50, even sometimes 60 doctors there from all around the country. I also attend meetings locally. Nebraska has a licensed work group. I do that every Tuesday. And I do NA meetings, mostly by Zoom now. There's an NA international meeting that I attend to a couple times a week.
So take us into one of those meetings. You mentioned that you meet every week, 50, 60 doctors. What's that like? What do you guys talk about?
Well, the nice thing about that is it's truly a caduceus meeting. So we're all sharing our stories, but also different problems we've encountered or the consequences because of our addiction. Some people face a lot of problems like me. I think I'm maxed out. Other patients don't. They just go right back into their practice. That's because most states do have a physician's health program. I think a common theme is the doctors, when they get there, like I did, we all feel horrible. We feel down, we're at the lowest point in our life, and they try to build that back up. So it's amazing. Doctors that have 20, 30 years of recovery are still at that meeting, sharing their stories with other physicians that are just fresh into Talbot, and it's very helpful.
Now, for those other physicians who had to succumb to addiction but now have recovered, a lot of times they feel like their professional careers may be at an end, but you've proven otherwise. So tell us, what options are there should a physician find himself or herself in your situation?
So specifically, if you get an OIG exclusion, there are two ways of doing that. One is to get your felony. In the federal system, you have to get a pardon. There's no expungement system. But you can get a waiver for that OIG exclusion if you work in a small town and if the state Medicaid director does that. So in Nebraska, the state Medicaid director, he is committed and devoted. He's writing a letter that should be sent out this week to the office, the OIG office, to request a waiver of this. If you work in a small town, a town that's underserved, that will qualify. In the town of Vanceboro, North Carolina, where I went to return to practice, they hadn't had a doctor there for several years. There's 900 people to feed the county area. So I think it will qualify that as well. I think the key is that recovery has to be number one if you want to get back to practicing medicine. If you take care of that, everything will fall into place. You continue with meetings. Don't think you have your recovery figured out or take it for granted. Because if you do, if I took one pill, Kevin, it'd be all over. I don't drink alcohol. I'm a Catholic. I don't even use communion white. And I'm committed to that the rest of my life. So continue treatment, continue recovery. I mean, go to meetings, stay in contact with other doctors that are going through this problem, Kevin, I think is very essential to good recovery.
We're talking to Jeffrey Fraser. He's a family physician, and we're talking about his KevinMD article, Let Doctors in Recovery Be Able to Recover Their Careers. Jeffrey, what are some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the KevinMD audience?
To any physician that's suffering from this horrible disease, just know you're not alone. We all feel unique, isolated, and scared to death. And also, you didn't choose to become an addict. These medications, like for me, the narcotic addiction, it's a very addictive medication. I had no idea that I could become addicted. So you're not alone. You can recover and you can get your career back. And I'm available to talk to any physician that is facing any professional, legal, or behavioral problems related to this. I'm in contact with doctors all around the country several times a day that are facing problems like this. And it's good for me, it's good for them. So my message is you're not alone, you can recover, and you can return to the practice of medicine.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for sharing your story time and insight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks a lot for what you're doing.